February 1959. The Northern Urals. Kholat Syakhl, a name that in the language of the local Mansi people translates to Dead Mountain, a name that originally seemed like nothing more than dark folklore to a group of young, vibrant student hikers. But in just a few days, it would become their epitaph. The group, led by Igor Dyatlov, consisted of 9 experienced hikers. They were strong, skilled, and full of life. They didn't know that the mountain had already begun its countdown. The narrator, who later pored over the final entries in the group's journals, recalls how their moods slowly shifted as they ascended. They pitched their final camp on the desolate slope of Dead Mountain. Strategically, it was a mistake. An exposed spot, biting winds, no firewood. It was as if they were intentionally presenting themselves to something watching from the darkness. That night, somewhere between 1 and 2 in the morning, something so horrific occurred that 9 professional mountaineers instantly lost their minds. When the search party found their tent weeks later, it was shredded, but not from the outside. It had been sliced open from within. The narrator describes this scene as an act of pure, primal terror. The hikers didn't wait to unfasten the door. They hacked through the heavy canvas with knives, desperate to burst into the night. They fled into the darkness, into a temperature of minus 30 degrees Celsius, without boots, without coats, wearing nothing but their thin underwear. What could be more terrifying than a slow death by freezing? Only whatever was left inside that tent. The tracks in the snow led down the slope. 9 pairs of bare feet left clear, haunting prints on the frozen crust. They walked in an organized fashion, almost calmly, as if in a trance. 1,500 meters away, near a massive cedar tree at the edge of the forest, the true horror began. The narrator recounts the discovery of the first 2 bodies, Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri Krivonishenko. They lay beside the remains of a small fire, their hands burned to the bone. It appeared they were feeding their own flesh into the flames, unable to feel the heat, or perhaps trying to warm themselves against a fire that could no longer save them. The branches of the cedar above them were snapped at a height of 5 meters. People had climbed upward in a bloody frenzy, trying to see something, or escape from something waiting beneath the tree. Further up the snow-covered slope, the scene became a record of agonizing death. Igor Dyatlov, Zina Kolmogorova, and Rustam Slobodin were found in positions suggesting a final, desperate crawl back toward the tent. They froze to death before they could reach the warmth. Their faces were turned toward the peak, toward the tattered remains of the camp they had fled in such haste. But the most profound horror awaited investigators in May, when the melting snow revealed the final 4 hikers in a deep ravine. The narrator focuses on the injuries that defy any known weapon or natural phenomenon. Lyudmila Dubanina lay against a rock, her head thrown back. She had no tongue, no eyes, and part of her facial tissue had been cleanly removed, as if with a surgical instrument. 6 of the hikers had their ribs crushed, as if by a massive, invisible press. Yet there wasn't a single bruise or scratch on their skin. It was an internal detonation of tissue, a compression that left no external marks. The narrator mentions strange details that the authorities tried to suppress for decades. The clothes of some victims were radioactive. Their skin had turned an unnatural orange or brick red color, and witnesses from another group of hikers reported seeing strange orange orbs in the sky over Dead Mountain that night. watching silently as if observing the slaughter. Theories crumbled one by one. An avalanche. On such a gentle slope it was impossible. An attack by the local Mansi. They considered the mountain sacred and would never have approached it at night. Military testing? Then why were the bodies scattered in such a bizarre, ritualistic fashion? The narrator leads to the conclusion that this was a collision with something beyond our understanding. Perhaps it was infrasound, caused by the wind howling through the rock formations, triggering a collective attack of uncontrollable panic. Or perhaps Kholat Syakhl is a place where the thin veil of reality tears open, letting out something that has no name. The case was closed with a vague verdict: death caused by an overwhelming elemental force. But Dead Mountain has not found peace. Even today, climbers feel a strange pressure in their ears and see those same lights on the horizon. Dyatlov Pass remains an open wound on the body of history. 9 shadows on the snow remind us that nature does not always want to be conquered. Sometimes, it simply wants us to run into the night, barefoot and defenseless, while it takes our tongues, our eyes, and our very souls.